Life Audio.
If you, listener, on the other end of this podcast, if you don't have a budget, you are missing out on one of the greatest ministry tools that God has given us.
Hey there, parents. Are you tired of the babysitter search struggle? Look no further. Welcome to KingdomCareSitters.com, where Christian families connect with like-minded sitters who share their faith.
I was searching for a reliable sitter who understands our faith and family dynamics. With KingdomCareSitters.com, I found the perfect match.
And guess what? You can discover sitter profiles, post jobs, and even schedule and book short-term or long-term care, all on the user-friendly website, KingdomCareSitters.com.
Plus, KingdomCareSitters.com lets you pay securely online. Whether it's date night, work commitments, or just some me time, Kingdom Care's got you covered.
As a sitter, I love being part of this community. I set my own rates, connect with amazing families, and make a difference in their lives.
Are you ready to find your perfect match? Visit KingdomCareSitters.com today, because when faith meets childcare, it's a match made in heaven.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Hello and welcome to the Encourager Podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebekah Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Hello, Encouragers. Today's podcast is brought to you by Just Thrive Probiotics, my go-to supplement to feel more energized and lighter. I also love the Just Thrive Calm supplement. It keeps my thoughts from spinning, and it keeps them more focused and in the moment. Use code Encourager to get 15% off by going to justthrive.com. On today's episode, we are talking with Katie Jones, who's going to help guide us along how to do finances according to God's way. And as we approach a new year, all the new things that happen, even when we get to the middle of the year that we're like, are we referencing back our goals? Are we referencing back our dreams? Are we getting geared up for the things that we want to have within our legacy, but we maybe not currently living them within our legacy? And so Katie's going to help us walk through what the Bible tells us about our finances and possibly a dirty word, but she's going to make it not dirty, the word budget. Welcome to the show, Katie. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, Rebekah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, let's talk about budgets.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your background and what qualifies you, if you will.
Yeah, great question. When I started out kind of doing all of this stuff, I had pretty much no qualifications. My husband and I, when we were graduating college, we were just dating and envisioning what our life would look like when we got married and what we wanted our future to be for our family. And at the time, I was working at a property management firm here in Denver, Colorado. I eventually became a leasing agent, so I was helping other landlords rent out their properties. And I wanted to do what they were doing. And so my husband and I, right after we got married, we bought our first rental property only like 3 months after that. And so when I did that, I was really excited to share our journey with whoever. So I started a blog and was talking about kind of like being a Christian landlord and how do we love our tenants. And so I just started blogging about real estate and personal finances. And eventually, a couple years after that, I had some people reach out to me who were like, yeah, I'd really love to be able to do this, but my money is kind of all crazy and I really need to get it in order. Could you help me? So that was back in 2020 now. And then that's when I officially started coaching. And I say officially, but I really had, again, like no legitimate qualifications at the time. It was just like I knew something that somebody else didn't and I could help them and I could assist them. So I started doing that. Eventually, I decided to take it a little bit more seriously and get a certification. So I did become a certified Christian financial counselor, which basically just helps me to really dive deep with individuals, with believers, to help them align their finances more closely with the way that God originally designed us to use them. And so that's what I'm really passionate about, really excited to do, is just equip believers with excellent money management skills that are rooted in the gospel.
I love it because it does talk a lot about money in the Bible. And so like, you can take two approaches to it where you just ignore it and it's coming in, which obviously that only lasts for a couple days. Mm-hmm. And then other times you're referencing a lot, but it's easy to also take into consideration the world and what the world tells us about money and success and those sort of things. So, okay, what is the first thing you want Christians to learn about managing their money in light of the gospel?
The first thing that I start all of my conversations out with my clients, where we get started when they come to me, is just asking that question, like, how are you bringing Christ into this conversation? Because the truth is, when it comes to any of our financial struggles or our life's struggles, there's no way that we are going to be able to overcome them or fix them or go through them without Christ, at least not well and not successfully, right? I'm sure the listener on the other end of this podcast knows that they have tried doing things all on their own, and maybe it works out for a little while, but eventually it you come back to this place of being like, no, this isn't right. I'm still not content. I'm still not finding peace. And so truly, we think that if we have emergency funds and a good budget and all this stuff, then we're going to be able to find that success and peace and whatever we're looking for in our finances. But the real truth is that without Christ, there is no hope. And so when it comes to our personal finances, it is so, so crucial that we begin with the gospel and understand that God wants this to be a relationship. He wants to be a partner with you in managing your money. And so he doesn't want you to just kind of go at it and do it wholeheartedly. And then, the way that I used to do it was I took the verse Colossians 3:23, which is working at it with all of your heart as if working for the Lord and not man. And I kind of use that as like this, God, I'm going to do everything for you. And I just went, full force into whatever goal it was I was trying to accomplish. But what I realized was that even though I was trying to do things for God, I was not inviting him into the conversation about my challenges. And so that's the first place we need to start, is inviting Christ into the conversation, sit down with him at the table and just be like, God, what would you do with this, situation that I'm in? So start with God.
Yes. And so important too is, like you said, we can follow Bible verses, we can follow programs, we can follow frameworks, and we're like, yeah, I'm killing it, right? But at the end of the day, like, you have to invite him into the conversation, asking him if this is what he had in mind at all, and where would he direct you? And it does take some being quiet. It takes reflecting, but keeping him at the forefront, even over the program or the framework or whatever it might be, is very important.
Definitely.
I have a quick question here, because in our pre-interview chat, we talked about this a little bit, but how did you recognize you had begun worshiping money rather than God?
It's kind of one of those like frustrating stories when you look back at it, because you see it in hindsight. You see where, you start to get off the path, and you never notice it when you're in the middle of it. But kind of like I was mentioning about this like Colossians 3:23 approach of just doing it for God, that's when I kind of realized that I had brought my own financial goals to God, and I was like, hey, here's what I'd like to do. Help me accomplish these goals. And again, I never really asked him if he agreed with these goals or if they were like good enough or if I should do anything differently. And don't get me wrong, like my goals that I had when I say like, oh, I have these financial goals, they weren't things like buying a mansion one day or to be able to have a private yacht, or it was never anything wild and crazy. My goals were simply, I'd love to become debt free. I'd love to be able to retire comfortably one day. I'd love to maybe even send my kids to college without any student loans. And so I had all these very honorable goals, and I believe that they are still goals that God smiles upon. They definitely don't contradict anything within the Bible. In fact, there's so many verses that talk about these things: becoming debt-free, saving for your future, having a budget, planning. These are all wonderful. But what I had done was I made them more important than God himself. And so I never asked him, I never brought him into that conversation about my money. So my husband and I actually we did this. We worked really, really hard to buy our first rental property. We bought another rental property. We paid off all of our student loans. And so when we hit this point of kind of becoming debt-free from all of our personal debt, I felt really, really good for like a day. But then the next morning, it was kind of like waking up and being like, well, now what? And I really felt empty and lost and confused. And then that is the moment kind of when I was like, yes, I've been saying I've been doing this for God. And so I never really lost sight of him. But what I really did was I kind of put my blinders on to focus only in on these goals and tuned him out to maybe even just those small whispers of him saying like, hey, instead of paying extra towards your debt this month, why not give a little bit extra to church or find someone who needs assistance and buy them groceries. I had really tuned out any way that the Holy Spirit might have been trying to communicate with me. And what I had done was, I looked at these goals and I was like, these things are going to give me security. They're going to give me hope for my future. They are going to give me comfort. I'm going to feel successful. And so I, at that point, had asked money to do for me what only God could do, right? God is the one that gives us those things, lasting hope, lasting security, lasting comfort, like all of these things. This is what God gives us. Sure, maybe for a second, you have a full emergency fund, you have things set up for your future, you feel secure. But again, that's not going to last. You might see it and feel good, and you might feel that comfort in the moment. But what happens when a big emergency does come and you have to use all that? You start to feel really depleted and questioning like, well, now what? And so that's the moment really when I started realizing I was asking my money to do these things, and it had become a terrible idol. And it's so easy to do. And I think that is one of the primary reasons why there's over 2,300 Bible verses that mention things like money, wealth, and possessions, not as like a blueprint for us. Yes, there's a lot of practical wisdom about what to do with our money, but it's also, and probably more importantly, it's all to warn us about this idol that money easily becomes, because it does have power, right? My friend Bob Loddick, he speaks so well on this idea that money is like the perfect idol because it gives us a sense of power. We can do a lot with money. We can buy a lot of things, but we can't ultimately buy those things that aren't tangible, like happiness and hope and security. Like that's only something that God can give us, even though money does kind of have the power to buy things that might make us feel that way in the moment.
Hey there, parents. Are you tired of the babysitter search struggle? Look no further. Welcome to KingdomCareSitters.com, where Christian families connect with like-minded sitters who share their faith.
I was searching for a reliable sitter who understands our faith and family dynamics. With KingdomCareSitters.com, I found the perfect match.
And guess what? You can discover sitter profiles, post jobs, and even schedule and book short-term or long-term care, all on the user-friendly website, KingdomCareSitters.com.
Plus, KingdomCareSitters.com lets you pay securely online, whether it's date night, work commitments, or just some me time. Kingdom Care's got you covered.
As a sitter, I love being part of this community. I set my own rates, connect with amazing families, and make a difference in their lives.
Are you ready to find your perfect match? Visit KingdomCareSitters.com today, because when faith meets childcare, it's a match made in heaven.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at thrivent.com.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because like you said, it wasn't that God wasn't in the equation. You were doing the goal, you were doing the framework, you were gaining this momentum, but not pausing long enough to say, wait, do you want this extra go towards the debt, or do you want this extra to go to whatever he had laid before you? So thank you for being vulnerable and telling us that, because I think money especially is such an easy idol to pick up and marry it with God in a way that's like, well, but he says this, and there's so much about the prosperity gospel and all of this that you do kind of have to individually sort out. And I think the emphasis, like you said, is on that relationship with God. Here are my goals. Here are my financial goals. What do you see happening with this? This is a desire of my heart. Does this line up with what you would want for me? And then sitting with it and discovering what it is he wants with it. So you get your certification. You start seeing all these clients. What are some of the biggest challenges Christians face with their finances?
I can tell you what the biggest challenges are that they think they're facing.
Okay.
And then we will talk about maybe more of the truth behind some of the challenges that they're actually facing.
Oh, yes. Tell us all the good.
What I find most of my clients, or even just individuals and couples who come to me and they're like, we're really struggling. They believe that their ultimate problem is that they need more money. Okay, I have all of these bills coming in. I have all of these responsibilities. Then I have my goals and just things that God is calling me to. And what we bring in right now is just not covering it. Like how do I make more money? Where do I find more? And all this stuff. But after we begin to work together, most of the time I'm like, yeah, like let's figure out, like I have lots of ideas for side hustles. Maybe this is something that we should work on. Like let's figure something out on, like, when do you have time? What could you do to potentially bring in an extra income, even if it's just a little bit, right? But after we begin to like work together and sit down and comb through their current situation, what we both begin to realize is that they actually have the resources that they need in order to cover all of their responsibilities, and also to be able to kind of start pursuing some of those goals that they have, some of the things that God is calling them to do. But, and here's where the big problem is that they're not managing this money well. They're not being intentional with every dollar that they're spending. So the actual challenge they have is needing to learn to manage their money with excellence and to get a real financial strategy in place. And this is a problem that even I face today, right? We get persuaded into buying certain things at different times. We believe we need stuff at, a moment's notice. And so we pay a little bit extra to get the express shipping on something, or to do DoorDash versus making food at home. It's so easy to step into this kind of convenience lifestyle, get everything as quick as possible. And there's definitely a time and a place. Trust me, there's many moments where I'm like, I am so thankful my groceries could be delivered and that I could pay someone a small fee for them to bring it to my doorstep instead of trying to get the kids into the car and go to the grocery store. So there are definitely a lot of great things that we can say about some of these conveniences that we experience and that we have the opportunity to use. However, if that's our default all the time, is just kind of going to whatever is easiest in the moment, we end up using these resources that God has entrusted to us, maybe not inappropriately. That's maybe not the right word, but just we're not intentional. We're not asking the question of like, is this the best use of my dollar right now? Or is there something I could do differently? Could I wait a little bit longer for whatever that thing is that I'm trying to buy online? Could I make dinner tonight? Can we check what's in our freezer and put a hodgepodge together? And maybe it's not the perfect meal and it's not the greatest, but we have the food and we don't need to go out for dinner. Or do I really need these pair of shoes right now? Or is this just something I'm kind of like making up in my head to say like, yes, I absolutely need these, right? These are things that I struggle with too. It's like really just asking those questions. Is it necessary and is it important? And it's not something that happens overnight. The answer is not something that we just one day flip a switch and we're really good at this. And I think that also tends to be a part of the challenge that so many of my clients face, that I face too, is that we hope that, that we can find this answer and the next day things are better. But like the same thing with exercise or even just working at relationships, you have to take it day by day, and you're not going to develop muscles overnight when you go to the gym. You have to be consistent with it and show up every day or every other day to the gym and commit to that consistency. And then that's when results start to happen. And so that's one of the biggest challenges that many individuals and couples face, is just trying to overcome their overspending and just being able to have a plan to manage these resources effectively.
Yeah, I think it's so true what you said too, because you can be motivated to change your financial situation, whether that's getting out of debt or building more side hustles or whatever it means. But if you lack the discipline to continue it, you won't ever get to see the fruits of that first couple of steps of the motivation. So you have to put disciplines in practice to be able to carry it out and see the things realized. Speaking of seeing the things realized in discipline, how can budgeting be a spiritual discipline?
I love budgeting. I know that's so funny.
Everyone, she said the sentence. I do too, actually, because I feel like when you do a budget, you have the freedom to know where the dollars were going and see which dollars are left or not. And then you can make choices. But if you're not budgeting, then when you're like, I can't as confidently spend because I'm like, but I don't know. And it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. So like budgeting to me was like, oh, good. Okay, I can see it actually produced freedom and less restraint. People are like, oh, I don't want to be. And I'm like, I think it produces freedom because then I know.
Absolutely. I would actually argue that if you, listener, on the other end of this podcast, if you don't have a budget, you are missing out on one of the greatest ministry tools that God has given us. Because it's about intentionality. It's about working with God to set up this plan to have an effective idea of where you're going to deploy every dollar, right? We want to make sure that all of our responsibilities are taken care of. We're paying for our bills, we're paying off our debt, we're saving for certain things in the future. But we also want to look at it to say, like, how are we actually day to day getting involved with kingdom building work? Like, where are we as a family spending our money missionally? And I always like to add this note that this doesn't mean that you have to now go and give everything away. That's never my intention. And I don't actually believe that it's God's desire. And one of the greatest examples that we have is the Proverbs 31 woman, actually. I know that we typically tend to use this as this noble wife, and we think about it kind of more in these this mother wifely figure. But when you look at it and pull that passage apart, you realize that this woman was an investor. She invested in a field and she managed employees. She took care of her family really well. And then she
looked good while doing it.
And she looked so good. Oh my gosh. These are goals. And then she looked at the needs of those in her community and stepped outside of just her home and impacted those who were, right outside her doorstep. So we need to be asking these questions, and we can use a budget to help us to actually see that and figure out how much have I been giving towards my church and to other missions organizations or nonprofits that are also doing kingdom work, but even just how am I helping my neighbor next door or my friend or my mother even, and just continuing to be very intentional about every dollar that we spend.
Yeah, Jesus talked a lot about his neighbors, a lot. And yes, it's good to give to our church and give to all these ministries and things, but sometimes the touch on your heart might be your neighbor next door. Yeah. Yeah, so good. Yeah, I think it's such a powerful tool to manage our money. And I do like the idea of turning it into a spiritual discipline, that this is what we do to be good stewards of the money that God has laid before us. And when we show up faithful and when we show up with a discipline, what more can he reveal to us when he can trust that we are doing the things and managing the money that he has gifted us with? I mean, Ephesians, he will do immeasurably more. And I'm always like, ooh, what is measurably more? Like, I have a version of what immeasurably more is in my head. And immediately I'm like, well, that's probably pretty little, kid, because God's version of immeasurably more could be all that he sees us fit to handle. And when we show up in the discipline of our finances, I think he giggles. I think he gets super excited for us and what we can attack with it, if you will. We always finish our podcast by asking our guest, Katie, how can you encourage our encouragers?
I actually, just this past weekend, heard a sermon. We're going through the book of Job right now. So maybe this gives you a clue on where I'm going with this, right? But we're going through the book of Job, and our pastor gave us such wise words. And I think that this is so great to hear if you are feeling challenged with your finances, is that if you right now are in a place where you're like, man, God, I have so much debt. I, can't overcome my spending tendencies. I just can never get ahead. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and it just really seems so bleak right now. And you're just praying to God, if I just knew what that light at the end of the tunnel would be, I'd be able to make it through these challenging times. Like, I'd have this hope for what is to come. And I want to encourage you that God doesn't always give us that idea of what is at the end of the tunnel, because we would end up only praising him for those blessings that he does give to us, right? If we knew he was going to help us get out of this pit, whatever that challenge is that we're facing, we would only praise those blessings and what he does for us. However, in the midst of your challenge, just cling to him. Just see him for the prize. Just see him as your hope for your future, because that's really what he's working on right now in you. And this applies to any challenge that anyone is facing. But that's something that I had to personally learn, not even just through my finances, but some other personal challenges that my husband and I experienced in the past few years. But I'm thankful that I didn't know what today would hold. Today, all these other challenges that we faced seem so small because of the blessings that we're experiencing right now. But if I knew what we were going to experience today, I would have only said, God, thank you today for what I have and what I'm going to have in the future, right? And so God wants us to praise him in the midst of the storm, even if it doesn't work out in the way that we want it to work out. So just seek him in the midst of your financial challenge.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. That's very wise advice, especially around how finances are so closely tied to our heart, and not making it an idol and continually asking him for the next step. Katie, where do we send people if they want to get some financial counseling from you?
Yeah, a great place to start. I have tons of free resources on my website, redeemingyourfinances.com. Specifically, if you are looking to get this wonderful ministry tool set up called a budget, right? The B word. Mm-hmm. If you are ready to do that, I do have just a simple, free, printable, a gospel-centered budgeting kind of PDF that you can use to start to get that ministry plan together. So you can grab that on my website.
Gosh, I love that you're using budget and ministry plan intertwined. Like, what if you started calling it, instead of the B word, you started calling it your ministry plan? That's a pretty powerful shift, just mentally, just in words. I love it. Okay, encouragers, I'm looking forward to you guys engaging in with us on social media after you hear this episode. Money can be something nobody wants to talk about, but if we're talking about how it builds a kingdom, I think we all want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So join us over there. Until next time, encouragers, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Ready to bring more organization and joy into your life? The Encourager Academy helps you harmonize your home and work life through our online course and coaching programs. Our 5-system approach, me, food, family, work, and home, tackles your biggest obstacles, offering lifetime access to video lessons and guided worksheets. Learn at your own pace with practical tools and strategies. Enroll now at encourageracademy.com and use code WeGotThis for $50 off.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.